All right, we're back. We just finished talking about assignment 2. It's COMP1004. That's Rapid Application Development, and it's the fall 2016 semester at Georgian. Week 4, part 2 of our broadcast. We're going to get into talking about some other stuff. I want to cover the PowerPoint presentations first, or parts of, as we go. And I've got 2 of them up. I've got part 1 and part 2. These are like chapters 6 and 7 from the book. Now, I know I'm kind of knocking off a couple of chapters at a time, and you might be like, holy crap, we're covering 2 chapters a week. Yeah and no, because there's some stuff that you've already done, and I just want to rehash that kind of stuff. So that's why it's the way it is. Let's take a look at event handlers and methods. Okay, so think about a method, again, going back to, if you're a JavaScript person, it'd be more like a function, right? But a function that's part of a class. So if it's just a function on its own, if we're doing functional programming, it'd be called a function. If we're doing class-based or object-oriented programming, and it's part of a class, it's called a method. Really, at the end of the day, it's a place where we can use kind of in the curly brackets or inside the curly braces, if you will, inside that code block. That's the place where we're going to have reusable code that we're going to call upon over and over again. All right, that's what we're going to be doing. That's what a method is for. Notice this is the general form for all methods in C#. Again, we're talking about syntax here. You can have public, private. By the way, there's other ones, protected, internal. Those are kind of access modifiers to the method name. You need the return type. So if it's void, if it's int, if it's double, if it's whatever it is that it's returning, you always need this. The method name itself, right? The parameter list, and your statements that make up the method. That's really the way methods are done in C#, just like they are in Java. No difference, pretty much, with minor data type differences. Okay. Again, a typical method, it returns a decimal. I'm going to do one of these. It takes a decimal. So here's where we have a method it's private. Now, if I was going to name this method, it wouldn't be get discount %. I wouldn't do it that way if it was private. I probably would put an underscore in here because that's my way, right? Because this method is a private method. So I would say underscore lowercase g for private methods, get discount %. I'm passing in a decimal. The local variable that lives and dies in this scope, which is between these 2 curly braces, is called subtotal. And what I'm doing is I'm going to calculate the subtotal based on, or get discount % based on the my statements here. Here's something that's really bad, and I don't want you ever doing this. And it's actually shown in the book. Well, actually, why don't you tell me what's really bad here that I never want you to do? Yeah. Oh, yes. You're 100% correct, my friend. All right? The curly braces do not exist after the if statements and the else statements. I put this cut and paste. When I saw it, I was like, should I change it? I could put the real way it should be done here. But you know what? I think it's better if we can use this as, you know what? This is really bad, right? And the reason why it's bad, yeah. I might. I might, because we're still doing discount %, and there's only one thing I'm checking. That's a great idea too. I might be able to go a ternary operator here, right? Because it's just if else, and notice I'm just checking my subtotal. So depending on what my subtotal is, I could have this value or this value, if else. So yeah, that's a great case for ternary operator. Fantastic. To me, I think that this kind of stuff, when you look at it, it causes errors, right? Why? Because we look at the formatting, right? And we're looking at it going, well, it's indented, so therefore it must be part of the if statement. No. I want you to think about this. If there's no curly braces, then this whole line here is one line that ends in semicolon, right? So it goes, if subtotal is greater than or equal to 500, then discount % is equal to 2. That's it. Point 2. That's bad, right? We shouldn't do it that way. We should give, and if I put, and this is the error that can happen, if I put another statement in there, right? If I fit another one in, even if I indent it, I might think in my mind that it's right, and you might not be able to catch it. You're like, you might break your head for an hour trying to figure out what the problem is. How come it's not giving me what I'm asking for? And then when you look at it, you're going to be like, oh, damn, I forgot the curly braces. So to avoid this problem, always, if I was going to say something, put curly braces after some kind of conditional statement, even if you only have one statement, right? Okay, I know it's heavy, and people may agree. There's 2 camps on this one, by the way. I'll be honest with you. If you actually look online, and if you look at the camps between a single, curly braces or no curly braces, there are camps that say, but curly braces add syntax, and we want to kind of simplify as much as possible. And if you're a developer, you should know, right? Example, if you were a Python, if you came from Python development, this might be okay, right? Because there's no curly braces in Python, right? But we're not Python developers, we're C# developers, and I highly recommend avoiding this kind of syntax. It's bad. In a real world situation, it might be frowned upon, especially from if I do a code review with you, I would point that out right away. Glad that you caught it. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to kind of go detail all these ones, but you can see they can take more than one value. Okay, calling a method. And again, if I was going to call, notice that there's in brackets, in square brackets, there's this, keyword this, which is the same in lots of languages. That this keyword refers to the object, right, that we're producing from the blueprint that is the class, right? So if I have a class, right, my class thing, but my class is a blueprint again, and I'm using this method to refer to the context of the class itself, right? So I could use this or not, right? That's why it's in square brackets. It's optional. However, I recommend to you that you use this as much as possible. Why? It refers to the object that you're talking about, and you won't be confused with other kinds of built-in methods. If I use this with a method, that's my method, right? It's not a method that's built into C# or somebody else's method, right? It's the method built into that class. And then an optional argument list, of course, right? Now, if you actually look at C#, if you actually put in this and it's not required, it'll be grayed out. And we've seen that before already, right? Where you can see that this keyword is grayed out if it's not required. Okay, I'm not going to go over that. Optional parameters. Okay, this is important when it comes to methods. It's the same as in Java in many ways, right? So if I assign a value inside the declaration statement, okay, an example of this would be private decimal, the get future value method. And if you notice here, I have a decimal with a monthly investment. That's my first parameter. And then I have my decimal with monthly interest rate. And you notice that there's a default value that I've assigned here inside the parameter declaration, or inside the method signature, right? These two are default parameters, right? So therefore, if I don't assign anything to monthly interest rate or months, I have default values. So I could leave those values out when I call the method. Okay. This is good, right? I like it, but caution, you cannot put optional parameters and then a required parameter. It has to be the other way around. So the default is required parameters first and then all optionals after. Okay, you can't mix and match. You can't sit there and go like, required, optional, required, optional. You can't do that. So bunch all your requireds together, all the things that you don't have default values for, and then all your optionals after. That's just the only piece of syntax you need to know there. This makes it very flexible for us because it gives you the idea that we have something called method overloading, which is not what's happening here. Okay, we don't have multiple methods. We only have one method, one signature, but optional values. You can add them in or you not add them in. It's up to you. Okay. And I'm not going to really talk too much about this. Omits the argument of the third parameter. We pass them by name. This is interesting. You can pass the parameter by name. So for example, let's say my monthly investment, right? My monthly investment parameter is the one that I'm looking at. I actually can say monthly investment, the parameter that I'm looking for. I'm naming the parameter with a colon. That methodology, that syntax basically says, hey, whatever I'm passing in here, put it into the monthly investment parameter itself. Why is this good? If I have an optional parameter, right, I can specify for that particular parameter that that's the one I'm using for that method call. And again, this is done on the call. So for example, decimal future value, I'm calling the get future value method, right, and I'm specifying which parameters that I'm using. I'm not using all three. Notice that if I go up a step, right? In my future value method, I have three parameters, right? If I go further up, like this one here. So I've got 1, 2, 3 parameters, but I'm only using these two by explicitly calling which ones I'm using. Okay? So it gives me flexibility. Am I going to use this very often? No, I probably won't. I'll be honest with you. I probably won't do it this way, right? Because I want to be more explicit. Right? But it gives you the flexibility in C# to do so. Button click methods. We've done this a lot. And one thing I want to talk, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I really do want to say one thing about this, even though we're doing the method call like this inside my button click method, it's not the preferred way. Okay, I'm telling you right now. I'm teaching it to you because that's in the book and everything else. But I recommend that this is not the best way in a larger application. It's not scalable, right? Because I'm locking down my code inside of a click event, right? The better way to do it is to call upon a class, a static class, a utility class that I'm going to reuse over and over again, right? And some kind of generic method that I'm going to be able to reuse for a lot of my click events, right? I'd rather do it that way and have my button calculate click event have some kind of other special features that are in there. And I might also create my own event handler. Remember we talked about event handlers and event listeners last week, right? Event listener, it automatically gets generated for you. Event handler, you kind of code, right? Remember, you can also point two event handlers at the same, or two events at the same event handler, so you can save upon that. We'll talk about that today. Again, I'll kind of hit that one more time. Like for example, creating a shared event handler, so to speak. So this isn't the best way to do it, but it tells you, you know, what the method does, and there's a couple of parameters that we take in. They're both required. So both are the sender parameter and the event parameter, which we kind of talked in detail last week. Okay, a method call that replaces the selected code. Yeah, I could talk about that, but there's nothing new or interesting. So if I don't have a piece of code and the method doesn't exist, I press Control dot. Remember, we talked about that. And you can also create extract method, right? So for example, let's say I highlight a piece of code inside my button click event, and I want to make another method that comes out of there. There's a couple ways to do that. And one way is to do something like refactor extract method, right, in your edit menu. So if I go, let's make up a new application for us since we're talking, right? And if you're following along, this would be a perfect place to kind of create a new application. I'm going to make a new Windows Form application for today, and we're going to call it COMP1004, and it's fall 2016, and then it's lesson 4. Okay, I'm going to store it, of course, in the folder that I have for this course, COMP1004. I'm definitely going to create this new Git repository, and if you don't have this clicked, I don't know what you've been doing all this time, because we're using Git throughout the entire process, so you need to have this this clicked. I'm going to click OK. And this is going to create a new project for me, eventually, in my virtual machine, I swear. There it is. I have my little form, okay? And remember what I want to do today, is I want to make a calculator, all right? I want to do a calculator. You're going to say, oh, Tom, that's so easy to do, right? Let's make a calculator. Let's expand the calculator box right now. And I want to rename this form to calculator form. All right, so I want to go to my Solution Explorer. The fastest way to do this, of course, is to go into my form1.cs, right-click, and rename. And I'm going to rename this calculator form with a capital C. There we go. Here's my calculator form. And it asks me, hey, do I want to rename stuff, all the other references? Yes, I do. Okay, my calculator form. I want to make some changes to this calculator form just to start off. What changes do you recommend that I make? What changes do you think I should make to my form? My calculator, I want to make some changes to my form. What am I going to make? Give me some ideas. Things that you would do for your form if it was your calculator. What would you do? Before I even start putting calculator buttons or anything like that. I'll come back to you in a sec. Tell me. Huh? You don't know? Yeah, what would you recommend? Right. Things that I would. So the name is already changed to calculator form, right? I could change some stuff in my properties. So here's if I go to properties, I click on my form itself, and there's some stuff that I can change. How about the title bar? My title bar says form 1. I probably would change that, right? So I'm making a new form, right? So I'm gonna probably change this to calculator. And how about my start position? Is this okay? Windows default location, which is the top left corner of the screen. Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say don't let this be okay. Change it. There's a couple of options here we haven't talked about. Manual. Here's one. Manual. Manual means I can put it anywhere I want, right? So this is the exact. First of all, the size will be with the whatever size I want, right? But my start position will be manual. I can tell it exactly where to go, right? I may not want to do that for me, I just want to put it as in the center screen. Well, you can certainly choose a manual position if you want. Okay. What other things would I change? Well, you know what? A thing to do probably, if you want a very similar look and feel to everything, you may want to change your font. So if I don't want to use Microsoft Sans, if I want to use Lucinda Sans, I probably want to start off with that too, right? So just to save me some time later. So Lucinda Sans. Now here's the problem. If I change my font size from 8 to something else, it'll change my default form size, right? So if I go to something like 14, be prepared for your form to really grow, right? Because it's going to scale according to the font size you're using. Press OK. I'll show you what I'm talking about here, like this. Becomes really massive. So you can always reduce the size again. It's kind of bring it down. But the great thing is now everything inside here is going to be Lucinda Sans about 14. Okay. What other things? Do I want to be able to maximize my form if it's a calculator? No. So I want to take away my maximize capability. And the way you look through, if you were not to know that you have this possibility, you can see that the maximize text box, maximize box, is true, right? I could reduce that. I could take that and make it false. So now the maximize box is kind of grayed out. You won't be able to maximize my form. Here's another thing. Do I want to be able to stretch my form out as a calculator and change the shape of it? Like actually make it larger, I don't want my form or this form to be sizable. So I want to change my form border style. So if I go to form border style here, from sizable, right, to fixed single. So that's going to change my form border. So it won't allow me to kind of change my. These are basic things, guys and girls, right? Because otherwise, your form will have generic values and inputs. Okay, cool. Well, I want to create a couple of things, right? And remember, we're talking about going back to why I came here in the first place. I want to extract a method, right? So imagine I'm going to have some kind of calculator buttons, right? Now, if I remember, the first thing we do when we make a calculator, right? If I was going to make an app, I've asked you to do this for next week is what? What's the first thing I'm asking you to do? What's the first thing I'm going to ask you to do? I know I got to wake you up a little bit because I need your input. I need your love, right? Is what? No, for now. I'm doing a calculator. What do you think I should do first? The UI, right? Let's do the UI together. There's some stuff that can help me, all right? I want to make the UI, and a great thing to do is actually look at a calculator that already exists, like this one, right? Here's a calculator. It's not like I'm working from a vacuum here, right? I have a couple things. This one keeps track of the history too. Wow, if I gave you a calculator and you did history, big bonus marks, right? It's not easy to do to code properly, and we'll talk about the same thing with like memory recall and memory plus. These are like additional buttons and square roots, to the power of 2 and so on. There's additional functionality here that I don't want you to add for our calculator. But here's the ones I want. I want the buttons. So I want, and again, this is pretty big here. See, I can't reduce the size because, and I'm kind of stretched because I'm kind of projecting. Let's see if I can, make this a little bit smaller, right? So I want to make the calculator small so you can see it on the screen. I'll make it a little bit smaller and smaller so we can do that. Now this calculator allows me to change the size, right? Thank God. Or else I wouldn't be able to show you what I want to do. So I want to kind of model it after this calculator a little bit, right? I don't care about the result, right? Again, up here is going to be so large. This is a very large result area, okay? I do want these things, the 7, 8, 9, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and 0 buttons. I want those. I want the decimal. I don't care right now about the plus or minus, okay? So I want these ones. I definitely want the equal sign, the plus, the minus, the times, and the dividing, and that's it. I also want the C button for clearing, all right? So I want to be able to clear my calculator. I don't care about this one, the C, but I have this one and maybe a backspace button so I can kind of, remove what I have in there already, okay? So those are the buttons that I want, okay? So I don't need everything from here, but the basic layout would be something like a grid. Notice that all the buttons are spaced out equally and they're all in a grid pattern, right? Now, here's option 1. I could create my calculator by dragging and dropping the buttons in manually, right? There's advantages and disadvantages to that. The advantages are I have lots of control. Disadvantages are I have lots of control, and I can make them all space out weirdly, and it might look weird, right? Might be better that if I go to my toolbox, there might be some way of a container that I could use that can help me out, right? Let's take a look. There's a flow layout panel, There's a group box, a panel, a split container, a tab control, something like that. And there's also other ones too, right? Like maybe what I want is some kind of grid. Is there some kind of grid control that I have, right? And if I look at grid, if I go grid, right? I have a data grid. I mean, that's a data grid view, right? I also want some kind of layout. There's also layouts that it has flow layout, table layout, hey, table layout. Maybe that's the one I want, right? If I click on table layout, right, which is kind of a type of container, right? I want to do that like rows and columns here. Now remember, we're doing absolute positioning with Windows Forms here. It's not relative. We're not using Windows Presentation Foundation, which is a totally different way of doing things, right? Where we do relative positioning. Okay, out here, I'm going to kind of pull it into this you know, the area right here. Right. Okay, cool. I've got like rows and columns, right? By default, you have these rows and columns right here. I want to kind of stretch them so that they fit the bottom of my screen. As much as possible, by the way, without any kind of margin, right? And the same thing goes to this. I want to kind of fill this bottom section here with controls, right? Maybe up to here, because I don't want a very big area up here for things. So I've got like a 2x2 layout right now, okay? I want to add additional rows and columns. And I don't know how many I need. Well, let's try and calculate this. I definitely need 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So it's a 4 column